laceration. There was no brain damage. There was no skull fracture. There were no fractures of any kind. No wrists, no ribs, no leg, no ankle. You know what I mean? A second chance to live. In that time, my wife had become pregnant. We had our third child, 13 years removed from our previously youngest child. And I didn't even really know if I was gonna live to see the child live and grow. So that day, I got the ability to know that your responsibility is here. So don't try to skip out on it, because we'll just turn your lights off again and turn them back on. Count the stop signs. 1 stop sign, just in case you didn't see it on the passenger side. 2 stop signs for the driver's side. There's an additional stop sign going in the opposite direction she was coming from. But as you can see, there is no stop sign, not a 4-way stop, almost a 3-way stop, because they gotta stop, she gotta stop. All right, the only people that's going is us and the people going straight across the front of Homestead High School. But that's driving in South Florida. Gotta love it. Something that happened while I was on peritoneal dialysis was seizures. When you go on to dialysis, when you start dialysis, some patients have what's called new dialysis onset seizures, which is because your electrolytes changing so much, salt in your body is being changed so much of your blood is being removed from your body, cleaned, and then returned to the body. Those electrolyte imbalances affect your brain, right? So I had 2 major seizures while I was on peritoneal dialysis, and I had 1 major seizure while I was on hemodialysis. During my first major seizure, I had a vision-like experience where I met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he introduced me to Master Farad Muhammad. As a Muslim in the Nation of Islam, our teachings are that Master Farad Muhammad is God in person. And like many people, I struggled with thinking of God as a man, because I had been taught God was a spirit all that time. So until this vision-like experience, while being a registered member of the Nation of Islam, still having those doubts about Master Farad being God in person. During this vision-like experience, I was convinced, shown, I was explained to that Master Farad Muhammad was God, and that everything that I had been taught was true. And so, as a hypocrite, basically, is how I would deem myself at the time, because a hypocrite is somebody who claims to believe something, but really doesn't. So that's when my faith went from believer/hypocrite to just believer. Oh, word? It's like that? Let me shut your lights off. Alright? You enjoy that seizure? Huh? Alright? You didn't learn from the last one? Here another one. Here's another one. Alright? If you think that that's all I can do, keep trying me. Keep trying me. But apparently, you're here for a real reason, so you can't go. So like I said, I went from believer/hypocrite to just believer. Funny story, that major seizure, the aura of that seizures are preceded by auras, which is like a little hint that you're about to have a seizure. It's like a small stroke. While I was in the aura, I was on the way to Nick Fury's house, which is interesting. So I'm on the highway driving, realized to myself, oh, I'm feeling like weakness in my extremities, in my hands, like I'm not gripping the steering wheel tight. And then I felt like I couldn't turn the steering wheel effectively. So I decided to pull to the side of the road. I was pretty sure I was having a stroke. So I was able to call rescue. Again, it's my second experience with a paramedic. So I pull over the side of the road. I'm on the 826 on the way to Nick's house. I'm taken from there to Baptist, Maine. At Baptist, they didn't diagnose a seizure. I was in Baptist for 2 days. I had an MRI done, I had a CAT scan done. I was placed on a 1-to-1. That's where you have a nurse's assistant stay in the room with you. But they didn't discover that there were any seizure activity going on until I was being discharged and had a grand mal seizure on the side of the bed. Right? So they didn't realize I was having seizures until I was about to be discharged and I was actually sitting on the edge of the bed holding my discharge papers, and the last thing I remember before I had the seizure was getting off the phone with my wife and her telling me that she was on the way to pick me up from the hospital, having been discharged. So I have the seizure in Baptist. They realized after speaking to a nephrologist and my nephrologist that it was new onset seizures. It had nothing to do with the car accident or the laceration to my scalp, but in fact due to electrolyte imbalance brought on by dialysis that had just started. That whole experience, being chronically ill, being on the other side of the bed, being a patient instead of the caregiver, the nurse, the medical professional, taught me a lot about empathy. It taught me a lot about humility. It taught me a lot about being fallible and not being indestructible, because I got complex, right? And to know that you're right about being God, but to also know that you're wrong about being the God is basically the biggest lesson that I took from my illness, which kicked off with this car accident right here. Well, I thought that my story was ended here, and to come back here, this is the first time. It's been 10 years. And I never walked this street before, came back over here to look, but it feels like a reminder that God is good and that I'm his favorite. That must mean that I have a job to do. So it reminds me even more so to do what I was placed here to do, because it could stop anytime. Instead of a scalp laceration, it could have been bleeding on the brain. My best friend in life is a victim of bleeding on the brain from a car accident. So having that experience with Jay in 2003 really opens my eyes now in 2020 that it's a blessing to come back here and see that I could have been in his position or worse. But I'm none of those things. I'm blessed. All praise to Allah. We're about to go to the studio. We're going to Fort Knox. I'm gonna link with Fury HD. We're doing the recording for Knowledge, Wisdom, Understanding, the EP. And it's a process.